If somebody calls me, I could be on 3 phone lines at once, and I could talk multiple fields of injury law all at the same time. When a client comes to my grocery store of law, they get everything under one roof here. There's a lot of my colleagues where they just do medical malpractice. They just do auto accidents. When to properly effectuate and maximize a client's recovery, to me, I need to be able to handle all aspects of their case. When I settle the workers' compensation case, I'm looking for the language of that contract to be the proper language in that contract. May have spread language, how it reads, because that language of that spread language or that settlement contract, it's going to affect what we do when we proceed to file suit in the third party case.
Welcome to Trial Lawyer View, the podcast dedicated to the fierce yet compassionate lawyers who fight every day for justice in the courtroom. Our guests are top trial lawyers and their firms who share their stories and experiences, offering valuable insights into their journey, as well as expert guests who provide actionable strategies and practical tips for personal injury lawyers looking to optimize their operations, enhance client service, and drive growth in their practices. Trial Lawyer View is brought to you by Synergy. At Synergy, we aren't just a service provider. We are a strategic partner for personal injury law firms, seamlessly integrating with law firms to boost efficiency from day one. Outsourcing cumbersome administrative tasks like lien resolution and Medicare compliance to an expert partner like Synergy enables personal injury firms to focus on what they do best.
Welcome to another episode of Trial Lawyer View. Today, I'm joined by Howard Ankin, who's the kind of lawyer who proves that a firm can grow into a powerhouse without ever losing its heart. As the founder of Ankin Law, one of Chicago's premier personal injury and workers' compensation firms, Howard has built his career on the belief that every client should be treated like family. Carrying on the legacy of his father, he's represented generations of clients with the same hands-on care while simultaneously scaling his practice into one of the most recognized names in Chicago. His reputation isn't just about winning cases, it's about creating lasting relationships that make him the first call families make when they need help navigating life's toughest challenges. But Howard's success story goes far beyond personal dedication. He's a master of strategy and operations, running a very busy personal injury firm that still delivers trial-ready advocacy at every turn. Known for embracing innovation, he streamlined client intake, leveraged technology, and built a team culture that thrives under pressure without compromising on results. With a career spanning decades of courtroom experience, community trust, and forward-thinking leadership, Howard offers invaluable insights into what it really takes to grow a law firm, serve clients at scale, and stay at the top in an ever-evolving legal market. Today, we discuss his growth and leadership principles, business practices, and the firm's philosophy on representing the injured in Chicago. Howard, welcome to Trial Lawyer Review, and thank you for being with me today on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So in doing my research and prep for today, I know that your firm has grown into one of Chicago's leading personal injury and workers' compensation practices since you launched it with your father in 1997. What strategies or decisions were pivotal in scaling your firm from startup to a powerhouse firm while still maintaining what you talk about as the client as family culture?
Well, I guess there's a lot to unpack, a lot to say with that. I mean, in general, I don't know that there was a specific plan as far as scaling. It's kind of like my law practice scaled out of necessity really from the beginning. So, my father and I had a weird family father and son practice where I really had my own practice and my father had his own practice. I had worked for 2 firms and then decided I wanted to start a firm. My father was a lawyer more out of his generation where he was a general practice lawyer and was used to working on his own. So with that, I thought maybe I could just be like a sole practitioner and be able to do everything on my own. And coming from these larger firms where I had more infrastructure, I knew pretty much from the beginning that me doing it all on my own, like how my father had done it, was just not going to work for me. Anyway, so I scaled up to basically around 12 people. And then that 2008 period happened where we had a downturn in the economy. I was basically, walking up and down LaSalle Street, which is in the Chicago Loop, which is the heart of our practice here in Cook County. And I'd walk up and down the street sometimes, see all the old timers, and they'd give me cases off the back of their file drawer or whatever. And I was just trying a lot of cases for a lot of lawyers. That's really where I got a lot of my business from, was being everybody else's trial lawyer. And then all of a sudden, 2008 came. I had a pretty, decent sized practice with 12 people. And all of a sudden, everybody that was day trading, everybody that was doing the stock market, so on and so forth, it all came crashing down with that downturn in the economy. So I thought I was just going to start advertising a little bit in order just to make sure that I didn't lose my infrastructure. But then as time goes on, every single time where I've tried to halt my growth, competitors are not halting. And these days now, with people coming in with private equity, national law firms proliferating all over the country, so on and so forth, we're really getting to a point where in the personal injury field, we're going to have, 5,000 person personal injury law firms, which was typically what we used to have, with corporate law firms. But I think that's how it's going to be now in the consumer arena. And certain states like Utah, and especially the state of Arizona, where they've invited private equity, historically, law firms were owned by lawyers only, but they now allowed in the state of Arizona, and in the sandbox idea that they have in Utah, where, and a little bit in the Washington, D.C. area, where you could have non-lawyers have ownership in law firms. And so to be competitive, you really need to scale in order to be competitive with these national law firms. And so I guess that's my story. It's just a question of, as a lawyer, we follow what the market bears, and that's what we do.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about the ABS and private equity in the mass torts and now in personal injury space. And I think you're right that we're seeing a shift. But to your point, in building a busy practice, you need infrastructure. It requires strong systems. I'm curious, in terms of what you've built, what operational processes have you put in place to make sure you streamline workflow and avoid bottlenecks, especially as cases move through from intake to litigation to resolution?
So I'll use an example of what's happened in my office first, and I'll get more into the specifics. But as an example, my office just got a jury verdict on Thursday night. So for that jury verdict, this case was about somebody that was a bus driver. He got rear-ended while working on his while driving his bus. So we got him his workers' compensation recovery. He got his medical lost time and a permanency award. And now we file suit against the defendant that hits the bus. They continued that case 4 or 5 times, trying to keep us from getting to trial. Our final jury verdict was our final offer before trial, was $38,000. We got, fortunately for our client, we got a $1.26 million jury verdict. So it was an incredible result. Now, I have 2 excellent trial lawyers that tried that case. But when you're talking about infrastructure, one, to be able to have these 2 excellent lawyers, that's first of all infrastructure, but maybe any law firm can have that. But what it takes to try a case now, like the case that I had, we had probably close to $100,000 in costs riding on this case. So other firms could be like, well, okay, like it's money, you could have that infrastructure also. But to try a case these days, part of it is we have to have focus groups. It used to be like years back, you'd have a jury focus group. That'd only be for special cases. But now every case is focus grouped before trial. And when you're doing the focus group, you're looking at providing trial exhibits that the jury is going to be able to utilize to help make a decision. So in the world that we're in, where we're constantly on social media, or like our whole world is like 8 minutes, 10 minutes, like probably people listening to me now, they've already tuned out. Okay. But what I'm saying is that in my office, we have two people that just were focused on helping to do these, not just prepare jury instructions, which we had from a legal assistant 20 years ago. But I had two people that were just working on trial exhibits to help make sure that like every step of the way, our exhibits for what we were saying orally matched what somebody could see. Because a trial these days, it used to be the oratory skills of the lawyer, but the oratory skills of the lawyer are really no more the dominant factor. People are so used to being on social media where they have a visual with their oratory, and that all comes together. All right. So specifically now, for my firm, I have two members that are in-house. One that focuses just on the hardware aspect of my office, one that just focuses on the software aspect of my office, two people full-time. I then have an outsourced company that does everything that relates to do with computer infrastructure, mostly making sure that we're not getting viruses and the basically maintenance of the computer is up and running. People come in and they turn on a switch and they can function. Then I have somebody that's in upstate New York that basically does an overview of everything as we're in an arms race to try to get through all the technology that we're going to be facing coming up here, okay, and everything relating to how the future of law is going to be practiced, and we can't get there fast enough. So I have somebody that's in Long Island, New York, that's functioning on that, and then I have somebody that's in Brazil, okay, and she is full-time, just doing full-time with our software, just trying to bring in all the new modern features of how law and technology are merging and coming together. 5 people, okay? 10, 15 years ago, definitely 20, none of this. You had a pen and a paper, even like the computer turning on was technology. So when you say, what are we doing as far as like maintaining an office, an ungodly sum is spent, just to maintain, but also trying to figure out like what the future of the technology is going to be. And this is also while maintaining around 100 people, staff members in-house, because you're still doing things kind of old school, and you're trying to get into, ChatGPT and that whole world. And so anyways, it's a very challenging time for law firms. I think my law firm we're thinking about it. I think we're on the forefront of it. Constantly going to seminars and, listening to people that have like ideas about like what the future is going to hold. And even with trying to put all these resources into it, it's still very hard to maintain.
Well, and there's so many issues that come along with it.
A little bit long answer there for you, Jason, but that's what it's hard answered in a single, in a short sentence.
It's all great points, because with as fast as technology is moving right now, fueled by AI and all the investment that's pouring in, to that space, and in legal space specifically, it's top of mind. But it is something too, what you were talking about generally speaking, is having experts outside the firm and inside the firm that are dealing with these specific niche issues. That's something that I talk pretty regularly about in what we do in talking to law firm owners about, well, why are you having either attorneys or paralegals spend time on hold with Medicare, for example, or, going back and forth with an ERISA recovery contractor? Why wouldn't you hire experts like we have here at Synergy who do that day in, day out? Let your paralegals and lawyers recoup that time, spend it on high value legal work, boosting the value of a case, getting another case closer to resolution instead of spending time on administrative tasks. But there's so many things now today that are like that as part of practices that technology solutions and outsource solutions can provide. It's tough to figure out what you should do, but going back to the business fundamentals and looking at, well, what makes the law firm profitable, healthy, and can deliver the best results for the clients ultimately is, where the focus has to be.
Yes, and that's really the intersection for the consumer, where there's an overall cost per case or a cost per employee at a law firm. And so when you add on, like all these different technologies, because every technology you have, you can't just like buy the technology once. How technology works today is there's a monthly fee for every single technology you have. And all these technologies, it doesn't come all together in a box with a kit where you get all the technologies together. You're needing to combine 25 different technologies and intermix them and make them work. And that's why I have to have so much infrastructure here to try to have the technologies come together. So when you say, how come somebody just doesn't hire Synergy? Yes, everybody should hire Synergy. And if you're with law firms such as mine that have the resources to where we can outsource what needs to be outsourced in order to make the case more successful for the client, yes. But if you're with, smaller law firms where they don't have enough business or they don't have enough resources or they don't have enough of whatever they need to outsource something, yeah, they're doing it all themselves. And I'm not saying that a lawyer can't do it all himself. It's just like when you get a company like Synergy that knows what they're doing, we're a society of specialists. They cut right to the chase. They get what's done that needs to be done. The timeline gets cut down, so on and so forth. You could have somebody that's fumbling around for a long time trying to get to where they need to go, and it's frustrating for everybody. But, if they don't have the resources to be able to, put that money into doing the work, like the client will eventually get what they need. But it's kind of like people that call me for a second opinion all the time and they're frustrated. And, and I'm like, I don't know why you just couldn't call like a firm like mine to begin with. But, yes, this intersection between technology and law, we're here. And it's like we're either going to be with firms that are up to snuff with the technology and the intersection of law, or you're not. And right now, those firms that aren't keeping up with the technology, they're still able to do things. But as soon as this technology starts to surpass, it's going to be unless they make this package of all these different technologies that have to come together, unless it eventually gets put into like one box where you could just turn it on, I don't know what certain law firms are going to do, because my office is in a full-on sprint to put these all together, and we're still having difficulty doing it. And I don't know how somebody would come later to catch up, because we feel like we're constantly behind.
That's a great point. Well, in doing a deep dive for the episode, I kind of gleaned from your website and from information that's out there that, your firm has built this reputation for treating clients like family and trying to serve as a legal resource for those clients. But that requires kind of personal hands-on service. So how do you balance that with needing to be an efficient operation with a busy practice?
So, you referenced my father before, and, my dad was a sole practitioner. My dad represented, families and, whatever anybody needed, he was there to help. So, from like early childhood, probably by the time I was like in fifth or sixth grade, there was no cell phone in those days. My dad had an office and my dad had, a phone at our house. So like a lot of my dad's clients, they would call our home. So, like I'd come home from football practice or whatever I was doing. And while my father was coming home from his office to eating dinner in the Ankin household, my job was to answer the phone. And I was like a secretary, at those times, legal assistant, we would say today. But, my dad would walk in the door and, he'd be taking his coat off and I'd be giving him the rundown. And if my dad heard something that he thought was like imperative, he'd go to my parent, I didn't live in that big of a house growing up, he'd go up to my parents' bedroom and he'd make a quick call and, dinner would be waiting, we'd be sitting at the dinner table waiting for my dad to come. Or if he saw that it was no big deal. And like after dinner, my dad would go spend an hour returning telephone calls, very old school attorney. So as our tagline today in my office is injury law made personal. And it was really like, if it wasn't personal for my dad, if he didn't make it personal, there was no food on the table, at my household. Clients put me through law school. So anyways, today, I think we have more staff than we run with a lot of my competitors. We're not trying to, we're not as lean as a lot of other law firms are. And we're also not doing things like, we don't have any outsourced people that are like out of the country. There's a lot of competitors they have people in Eastern Europe, they have people, in the Philippines, they have people in Mexico or South America that are doing legal work or answering their phones. I don't have that. Like everybody that works for me, they're a Chicagoan. It's also, it's, coming out of COVID, working in office is not the norm. I have a lot of people who do not take a job with me because I'm an in-office lawyer. Now people may, we scaled it back now that people could work one day a week from home. But for the most part, everybody here is in office working. And I think we have better attention to our cases. I think it's more personal that somebody has to come to the office and be attentive to, somebody's case. And, yes, it is difficult to balance everything that's required. And I do have to say is in general, like for my clients also, I don't know that people are, I don't know as a society as a whole if we're giving as much service to our fellow Americans as we did, when I graduated law school, almost 35 years ago. But next to the service that the world provides today, I definitely think we're doing it. And yes, there's a lot of times where, I got a prior client that calls and they just want a question about like, somebody ruined their shirt at the cleaners and I really don't have time for it. But I do try to make as much time as I can to call and talk to people. And as you can tell, Jason, I'm the longest winded guy I know, but when I do talk to people, I try to give them my all. So they may get 3 phone calls in one, but I try to answer all the questions and pull it from different angles and really make sure that, when somebody talks to me, they really feel like they got an answer and really feel like, a conversation with Howard Ankin was not wasting their time.
It's definitely a bit of a lost art today. I think I've really tried to instill in our people the value of being there for our clients, providing advocacy support because it is unusual today to see that, and especially because, like you said, personal injuries are very personal, right? It's that I learned that firsthand with my own personal case, and I think the law firms that can deliver on that are the ones that get the 5-star Google reviews, because clients feel that. They also feel when they're just simply a number in a big, inventory of cases. It's just a different feeling that you get.
And I will add to you the other way though, like we try to make an injury law made personal, but I try to make it where it's not McDonald's, like it's not just one way. And where we're at is an intersection, not only technology, but we're at an intersection of different people in different life cycles, or different people at different generations. And so I'm 57 years old. So if I'm generally talking to somebody who's maybe like age 50 up, they really want to talk to me all the time. And I have other people where like I want to have a conversation with them, and I've had people that are like, just text me. And I'm like, just text you. I can't express to you everything that I want to express to you in a text. Like I need you. And also like where the law is with technology is also the law is written for technology to be in that 50 and older generation. But like the ability to text people without consents and all types of stuff, that's also like they need to rewrite all these rules. And so I feel like for people that are like in a younger generation today, I don't really know if they even want that type of personal service. It's kind of like, look, I hired you to get me a result, get it for me. And they don't need, they don't need if I represent somebody that's in my generation, they want me to sometimes explain it to the level where I have to say to people, I'm like, look, I can't make you a lawyer for your case. Like they want to explain to the point where they can almost do it themselves. And I understand that, because that's how I am. If I have to, like if I need a professional helping me, like I really want to know. But in other generations or other people, they're like, look, I hired you based on your reputation. They don't quite say it this way, but this is what they mean. I hired you for your reputation. Just tell me what I need to do. Text me, and I'll wait for the result. And that's people that are grown up with technology. You type it in the computer spits out the answer. They don't need all the personal attention. So even my tagline, injury law made personal, I don't know what that's going to be 2 generations from now. We'll see.
Yeah, good point. Well, so you talked about the verdict that your firm just got recently, and I'm curious about, with the type of practice you have, how do you make sure that the firm is trial ready while managing the demands of, a busy caseload as well?
Well, like there's processes for everything. And so the process of the litigation kind of like formulates that like certain things have to be done at certain periods of time. This is just how I do it. And I don't know that, my colleagues do it the same way as me. So mostly it's for quality control for me for many reasons. But like once the case goes into litigation and the case is going to have a certain value, or we think it could have a certain value, I have conversations with my attorneys about what experts we think we need for the case. So it's a lot of times where, I'm getting involved in a lot of our cases at the point of, what type of experts are we going to be using? For that provides quality control for my clients to make sure that we're maximizing the recovery. And it's also for me as, being a business owner, I want to know where these experts are expensive, and it's my resources that are going into these experts. So I want to have a say about what experts we're using, and have that involvement. So anyways, that's a lot of times how I work on quality control. Also, then once you have these experts on the case, a lot of these cases are $100,000-$200,000 in costs. We have cases that are over $400,000 in costs. So like when we're going to do trial, we do focus groups, and then also, my lawyers are not happy about it. Like this jury verdict that we just got, I don't know that the lawyers were quite happy with me while we were going through the process, but they have to give me their opening, their closing, or I know, in this case, the cross-examination of that expert was a vital portion of our case, and they have to perform for me. And I know that if I'm interrupting them, if there's an objection, from the other side, I know that it's going to be a lot easier for them to do their opening or their closing or what have you for me than it's going to be for anybody else. And we probably, on this particular case, there was a first, second, and a final. There was a three-part rehearsal before they went to pick that jury. And I'm fortunate to say, it was a good jury verdict. It was a good result, but that was by far, it was not by far the biggest case that we ever had here. It was a good result, but it wasn't, it's hard to say with 100 people and the kind of economics of my firm. That result is, it's unfortunate to say. It doesn't really even move the needle internally in terms of the economics. It does for our client, but not for our firm.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, when you've got that kind of overhead, right? It's you have to have some bigger outliers, and you have to have the smaller ones too. It's that you run the spectrum in order to feed that kind of machinery, because that is a big operation.
Whatever's required for the particular case, we're here to get the best result that we can for our client and try to keep the economics of the case out of the equation as far as the law firm goes, because ultimately, there are cases that, if I talk about the winners, I guess we talk about the losers. We had another very, very difficult case, which is maybe why we put so much effort into this particular one. But we had one a couple months back that was tried, and I'll say we got 0 on it. But we were lucky to get past what's called summary judgment. That's where, the judge might say, after all the discovery is done, the case can't even proceed to trial. And, as another one, we had no offer on the case. There was never an offer put on it. And, we had a client that was wearing all black, walking in the middle of nowhere, on a back road at 3:00 in the morning. He was walking home because he got picked up for a DUI, and they let him go after he slept it off a little bit. So that the jury didn't hear that part, but he got hit on a 50-mile-an-hour roadway, with no lights, no whatever. It was a very, very difficult case that we took on, but we took it, and instead of saying in the middle of the case, hey, we can't do anything with this, we saw it through for him. My law firm probably lost, we lost in costs on that one about $80,000. So, it's, if I talk about the winners, I got to talk about the losers too.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think the public doesn't understand well, is this idea that, personal injury firms have to make an investment in every case. And there is some element of gamble or chance to that, because you don't know necessarily how all the facts will get developed, or theories of liability and whatnot. I mean, you do your best in evaluating cases, but still there's a lot of risk, which is why personal injury lawyers and law firms get paid the way they do. There's inherent risk in taking on those cases. just is what it is. So I wanted to circle back to technology, and because you talked a fair bit about what you're doing, but I'm curious if there are any tools or solutions that you are implementing that you consider essential for personal injury firms today.
Well, I mean, at its core, every business, no matter what it is, you need some type of software that runs your business. And, probably like whatever field anybody is in, real estate or law or physician, medicine or whatever it is. In a lot of fields, there's like a certain software that kind of, I think is like the mainstay of that, of that profession or of that business that, runs certain businesses. And a lot of times, when people are going to go for job interviews and so on and so forth, a question these days people are asked is like, did you run a software that ran off of Salesforce, which is really like the basis of, the overlay of a lot of software technology. So, like when people are looking for work, like where did they go to school and what did they study? So, do you have core brain power, I guess, to even work or to do something? And based on like what level of business or profession you're in, that you kind of like slot yourself in, by how much brain power, I guess, it takes to be in that, that particular field. And then on top of it, then, there's a technology component where, some people, like if they know how to code that software, that's a benefit versus people that might have, turn on the computer to even know how to use that particular software. And then on the overlay to all these softwares are, there's the ability to text. There's the ability to send out like one company called DocuSign, which there's other competitors. And, it goes on from there. How do we exchange, a huge amount of documents with each other? And all these things are, how does the computer software work where we add on all these other functions of business, and how does that all come together? So anyways, for having the right employees, they really have to know how to use technology well as having a core understanding of what the business is about, as well as having a core ability to do the work, as well as a core passion for the type of work that they're doing. And, that technology piece, I'm not sure that was ever as prevalent in prior generations as it is today.
Yeah, 100%. So I wanted to circle back to something we talked about already, but zero in on an aspect of it. So with a busy PI practice, you can run the risk of sacrificing quality for quantity. You talked about your tagline, injury law made personal, which, as I said, to me is, hits home. I'm curious about the strategies you found most effective in scaling the firm, but still protecting the quality of the advocacy and the resulting outcomes for each individual client. And you talked about a few things, but I'm just wondering if you can put it all together for how you've managed all of that.
So I guess in the 30-second elevator pitch about like what I feel my law firm's value proposition is, like anybody could say like, well, I'm going to be personal to clients and so on and so forth. So like the real legal proposition is this. If somebody calls me, I could be on 3 phone lines at once, and I could talk multiple fields of injury law all at the same time. I could handle somebody's Social Security disability case. I could handle somebody's workers' compensation case. I could handle their medical malpractice case. I can handle their trucking case. I can handle their construction case. I can handle their products liability case. so on and so forth. And typically, like in a day, I can toggle through, being on the phone, toggling through these telephone calls and exchange, having information about, one to the other. In my office, I have people that specialize in each one of these fields. But when a client comes to my grocery store of law, okay, they get everything under one roof here. There's a lot of my colleagues where they just do medical malpractice. They just do auto accidents. They just do auto accidents pre-lit. They just really do, most of everything that they do is in litigation. When to properly effectuate and maximize a client's recovery, to me, I need to be able to handle all aspects of their case. So I'm looking that when I settle the workers' compensation case, I'm looking for the language of that contract to be the proper language in that contract. May have spread language, how it reads, because that language of that spread language or that settlement contract is going to affect how the Social Security disability case works. It's going to affect what we do when we proceed to file suit in the third party case. And I need to look at all aspects of this. And it's not just like, look, this is the hammer that I have looking for a specific nail. There are times where I'm like, look, I can't make a work injury case or an auto accident case because those are easier cases economically to have. So, we're actually looking, like on especially larger injuries, was there a products liability case here? Was there medical malpractice? And like those cases, you may not be able to see them by just talking to your client on the phone or even looking at records. You really, these cases cost $5,000 or $10,000 in consultation fees just to get the right expert to know where you need to go. And I'm saying is like when you're talking about having, a modern day law firm, we need to have consultants that are on a monthly fee with our firm, consultants that are just there to say, I'm looking for a certain expert that does X. And then that consultant who's on retainer on a monthly basis has to go out and say, like, I'm looking for a lawyer in Chicago, or I'm looking for a lawyer in Orlando that does this, or an expert does this here or there, and looks, smells, and feels like this, in order to be able to make sure that we're getting the right experts that we need for the case. Having multiple field, when somebody gets hurt, there may be multiple things that they need in order to get a recovery. And I try to combine that under one roof in my firm, which I'm not sure that it's done by other law firms, or definitely firms that may be of younger generations, where since we're so specialized, people just do the specialty. And especially in these days when it comes to marketing or advertising a law firm, it is much easier to say, I do trucking accidents only. And that resonates with the client. But if you're involved in a trucking accident case, you may need Social Security disability. And that could be outsourced and referred to another firm. It could. And I'm saying is there are times where we need somebody that has like the specialty that Synergy has, like we just need to outsource it. It's better to outsource. But there are many times where it's like having everybody in the house and my lawyers can all talk with each other, and I'm forcing them to be in the office, and it's for that reason. We want to maximize recoveries. And the managing partner of my firm, he's also like, look, I'm glad you're getting all this done, but it's also got to be done timely, because he's trying to shave weeks and days off of people's cases, because people, even though they might get the result, if it's, if they feel it's not done timely for them, they're not pleased with the result no matter what happens. And we're also subject to, Chicago and Cook County, where I'm at. It could be the third largest city in the country, but after you get done with all the boroughs in New York, or you get done with LA County and Orange County, and you get done with all the ways that it's segregated up out in California, we're the largest legal system in the world here in Cook County. And so, we're going to be subject to whatever time it takes. So anyways, all these things take the resources and trying to, piece it all together.
Well, you've been very generous with your time today. So final question, and I ask this at the conclusion of every episode. It's open-ended. Since it's called Trial Lawyer Review, and as a 30-year trial lawyer and founder of a Powerhouse Chicago personal injury firm, what is your view as a trial lawyer?
An often question that's asked to me either by people that are prospective going to law school or by prospective clients or people that I meet here and there, they ask me, like, what's important about being a good lawyer or what's important about picking the right lawyer. That's often a question that people have. And I just have to say is, whether it's, this generation today or, prior generations, no matter how much technology there is, hiring a lawyer or being a lawyer that has a passion for law, you're never going to be able to substitute that. There's no amount of being able to type something in to AI and getting an answer that's going to be the substitute for somebody that really cares about getting somebody justice. So anyways, I just encourage anybody that wants to be a lawyer. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of tools that cut through the red tape of time, but I still don't think any lawyer that's going to really be good at what he does is, going to be working from 9 to 5. Law of any generation requires, it's something that requires time and it's something that requires passion. So when anybody, whoever's been represented by me or anybody that wants to be represented by me, I just feel like I'm going to give them the passion that I have, maybe mostly because I'm a, third generation lawyer. So, I was, reared to be a lawyer in some respects. But if somebody needs me, they could get me at 312-6-million and, give them a free consultation and I'll tell people what I can do for them.
Well said. So if any of our listeners today have a case that they need to refer to local counsel in Cook County, what's the best way to reach you?
Now, the best way to reach me is to call 312-600-0000, just 312-6-million. If I'm not available, you'll get one of the other lawyers in my office. Ultimately, you're going to get me in my system at some point along the course of your case. If I'm available, I'll talk to you myself. But if you call 312-6-million, you're going to at least get the information that you need. If you decide you want to retain us, great. If not, at least I'm making sure that you're on the road, on a path that you need to go. And if you need to pick me up later, at least I got you on the right path of your case. So anyways, I'm here to help people that need help. And I like being a lawyer, and I like, I like assisting people, especially in their time of need.
Great way to wrap up. Howard, thank you for joining me on the Trial Lawyer Review podcast today, and we'll see everybody on the next episode.
Jason, I appreciate you having me.
Here is another episode of Trial Lawyer View. We hope you enjoyed today's guest and discussion. Tune in to our next episode for more helpful insights from fellow trial lawyers and practice experts. This podcast is brought to you by Synergy. Visit partnerwithsynergy.com to learn more about how Synergy can free your firm to focus on what it does best.